Hello, I'm Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Literary Love 123, where I combine my master's in English with my passion for the horror genre to talk about the books that I read. Today's video is a very informal, casual, February planned video. So grab your cup of coffee or whatever it is that you like to drink. And after this quick intro, we'll just chat. We are already 1 week into February, and some of my TBR I have already checked off my list. So I am going to talk briefly about those books. I plan to do this toward the end of January, or at the very least, like the first or second day of February. But 2025 is kicking my butt, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate. But let's talk about some books. So, first of all, I've already read for Folklore February, which is hosted by Kat. I will link her channel down below. I read Every Heart a Doorway, which is the first of the Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire. So many people hyped up this book and this series. So I had very high expectations going into it. And I feel like that probably skewed my response to the book. I did end up giving it 3 stars. Let me just tell you a little bit about it. And I am just going to read the synopsis because it's kind of a complicated book to explain. And then, especially because it is a series. Okay, so here's your book description. Eleanor West Home for Wayward Children. No solicitations, no visitors, no quest. Children have always disappeared under the right conditions, slipping through the shadows under a bed or at the back of a wardrobe, tumbling down rabbit holes and into old wells, and emerging somewhere else. But magical lands have little need for used up miracle children. Nancy tumbled once, but now she's back. The things she's experienced, they change a person. The children under Miss West's care understand all too well, and each of them is seeking a way back to their own fantasy world. But Nancy's arrival marks a change at the home. There's a darkness just around each corner, and when tragedy strikes, it's up to Nancy and her newfound schoolmates to get to the heart of the matter, no matter the cost. So I did end up giving this 3 stars. I appreciated the LGBTQ representation. I appreciated the theme of finding a place where you feel like you belong when in everyday life you feel like you're different, you don't quite fit in. I could relate to that. I like the horror elements too because Seanan McGuire did not hold back on the horror and the darkness. I believe that the rest of the series, I think, I'm not sure, but I think we actually get to get backstories on the different children, like into the fantasy worlds they went to. We find out in this book which ones they went to, but we only get like details as they kind of relate a little bit to whether or not they visited a high nonsense or a high logic world. A wicked world or a virtuous world. And there was also a great deal of social commentary, themes of inclusivity. So I appreciated all of that. So I may revisit the series later, but I'm not jumping, right into the second book in that series. So the other thing that I've already read is Jerusalem's Lot, which is a short story from Stephen King's Night Shift. That's for an upcoming project that I will be sharing more about as time goes on. I'm super, super excited about it. But Jerusalem's Lot is a very Lovecraftian story, but it also has Gothic elements too. It is connected to Salem's Lot, his novel, but Jerusalem's Lot takes place like in the 1800s, but it also flashes back to events in the 1700s. And I really don't feel like I can say a lot about it because it is a short story. I did give it 5 stars, and I'll be saying a lot more about it coming up soon. Okay, so now we're going to move on to my actual TBR. So let me go. This is so casual and informal. Like I said, I'm drinking my coffee, putting on makeup, and just chatting with you as if we were, sitting together. I don't know. I feel like this is like, excuse that tapping. That's me getting my powder out to powder my face. But I feel like I'm in high school or something. Like you used to, or I used to. Maybe you did too, hang out with your best friend. They would stay over or whatever, and you would get ready together. You were getting ready to go out for the night, right? So I kind of feel like that's what we're doing, chatting, putting on makeup, all that good stuff. So, okay, here we go. So I'm going to be rereading The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Keist, which was my favorite book of 2024. I am going to be a guest on Chris from Secrets Read and Cliff at Cliff's Dark Gems, their book club, the Fright Club. And so I'll link both of their channels down below, but I'm really excited to reread this and to discuss it with Cliff and Chris and everyone who joins the live show. I'm also nervous because I want everybody to love The Haunting of Velkwood as much as I did. So let me talk about what The Haunting of Velkwood is about. So our main character, Talitha Velkwood, she had a very strange thing happen in the neighborhood where she grew up. All of a sudden one night, after Talitha and her two best friends had left for college, this mysterious veil comes down and it separates the neighborhood from the rest of the world. No one in the neighborhood can get out, and no one from outside the neighborhood can pass through that veil except for Talitha and her two best friends because they previously lived in that neighborhood. And it's also interesting too because Velkwood is the name of the neighborhood or the suburb, and then also the last name of our main character. So you have this duality of this haunting, that you have the neighborhood itself that's haunted, but you also have a person in the form of Talitha that's haunted by her past. This really leans heavily also into the idea of suburban Gothic. And so that is why I am going to read. Also, I'm just kind of blabbing around. That's just what I'm doing today. So I'm going to be reading a Shirley Jackson novel, which I never have read yet, The Road Through the Wall, because I want to really kind of investigate more about suburban Gothic, because I did become very interested in it whenever I read The Haunting of Velkwood last year. So I want to kind of dive back into that too. So let me talk about The Road Through the Wall. Again, I am just pulling this up on my phone, very casual, very informal. So just hang with me, right? Or not. If you don't want to hang with me, then you can go. I'm not holding you here. Oh, let's see. If I could type without my big fat thumbs, that would help. Lord have mercy. I need to finish this coffee. Maybe I can get some brain power going here. Okay, so The Road Through the Wall by the awesome, incredible Shirley Jackson. Everyone knew the residents of Pepper Street were nice people, especially the residents themselves. Among the self-satisfied group were Mrs. Merriam, the sanctimonious shrew who was turning her husband into a non-entity and her daughter into a bigoted spinster; Mr. Roberts, who found relief from the street's unending propriety in shoddy side street amours; Miss Fielding, who considered it more important to boil an egg properly than to save a disturbed girl from destruction. It took the gruesome act of a desperate boy who lived among them to pierce the shell of their complacency and force them to see their own ugliness. So that is, that sounds perfect. I'm so excited to read that. I love Shirley Jackson. And this is one that I haven't been able to get to yet. So I'm really happy there. Okay, so just spinning right along, moving right on. Also, for another book club, the Death by TBR Book Club, which is run by Crystal at Fiber Artsy and Kelly at Kelly Hooked on Books. For that book club, I'm going to be reading Into the Forest and All the Way Through by Cynthia Paleo. And let me tell you what this is about. Into the Forest and All the Way Through is a collection of true crime poetry that explores the cases of over 100 missing and murdered women in the United States. So I've read from Cynthia Paleo a few times before. I read The Children of Chicago, which is a fairy tale type story, but it is mingled with true crime and detective work, and it takes place in Chicago as her writing typically does. And then I also read a short story by her in one of the Christmas anthologies that I read in 2024, and it was a fairy tale type story too. So I do like the way that she draws on fairy tales and other types of folklore in her work. So I'm looking forward to reading that. Just kind of going down my list here. Also, for the I Love Black Horror Readathon, which is being hosted by Kelt Sweets, and she also has some co-hosts, and I will link all of their channels down below. For that one, I am currently listening to Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon. I guess I'm probably about 20% through it. So let me tell you what the synopsis for it is instead of trying to explain it, since I'm not too far into it. But I will say at this point, it will be a 5-star. Like I said, I'm only 20% into it, but I'm feeling that. Vern, 7 months pregnant and desperate to escape the strict religious compound where she was raised, flees for the shelter of the woods. There she gives birth to twins and plans to raise them far from the influence of the outside world. But even in the forest, Vern is a hunted woman. Forced to fight back against the community that refuses to let her go, she unleashes incredible brutality, far beyond what a person should be capable of, her body racked by inexplicable and uncanny changes. To understand her metamorphosis and to protect her small family, Vern has to face the past and, more troublingly, the future outside the woods. Finding the truth will mean uncovering the secrets of the compound she fled, but also the violent history in America that produced it. Also by Rivers Solomon, I'm going to listen to Model Home when I finish listening to Sorrowland. So let me tell you about Model Home. This is my month of Rivers Solomon too. All right, Model Home. The three Maxwell siblings keep their distance from the lily white gated enclave outside Dallas where they grew up. When their family moved there, they were the only Black family in the neighborhood. This sounds like it could also fit into that idea of suburban Gothic. The neighbors acted nice enough, but right away, bad things, scary things, the strange and the unexplainable began to happen in their house. Maybe it was some cosmic trial, a demonic rite of passage into the upper middle class. Whatever it was, the Maxwells, steered by their formidable mother, stayed put, unwilling to abandon their home. Terrors and trauma be damned. As adults, the siblings could finally get away from the horrors of the home, leaving their parents all alone in the house. But when news of their parents' death arrives, Esri is forced to return to Texas with their sisters, Eve and Emmanuel, to reckon with their families past and present, and to find out what happened while they were away. It was not a natural death for their parents, but was it supernatural? I'm so excited to read this. Yeah, it definitely fits in suburban Gothic because this next little paragraph says River Solomon turns the haunted house story on its head, unearthing the dark legacies of segregation and racism in the suburban American South. I'm so excited to read this. It sounds so good. And if my 20% into Starland is any indication, I feel like River Solomon is about to climb into one of my favorite author slots. Okay. So let me look at my list. I still have more stuff going. I will also be reading Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. I did last night read just a little bit of it, the beginning where there are quotes from magazines from back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s about unwed mothers. I have got to research and see if those are actual quotes pulled from those magazines because they were very disturbing, but they also really, really pissed me off. Since we are just sitting here having a chat, I will say that I was an unwed teenage mother. So I have some anxiety about going into Witchcraft for Wayward Girls because I will be 50 in April, but the ways I was treated as an unwed teenage mother, I've processed all that, I think, through therapy and through a lot of years and, just a lot of deconstructing things that I was taught. And, it's very complicated. But even those quotes just really gave me some trouble. So I didn't get very far in it. But I am reading it for a project and I will get through it. Okay, let's not dwell on that. I really won't talk about what Witchcraft for Wayward Girls is about. I just shared enough, and I feel like it's everywhere, like it's inescapable. So you probably know what it's about. It is. I'll briefly just say it's about obviously unwed teenage mothers, and they're sent away to a home, and they discover witchcraft. So let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything that I am. Oh, there's another readathon, the Gothic Hearts Challenge readathon. I don't know exactly the term. What is the term for it? I want to say it exactly right. Is it the Gothic Hearts Challenge? Is it the Gothic? I have this written down. I am just very unorganized today. Gothic Hearts Reading Challenge. Yes. Yay. Okay. And it is hosted and created by Regina at Regina's Haunted Library. So I will link her channel. Okay. I will link her channel and her co-host channels down below. I need to also link the videos with all the prompts for these readathons that I'm talking about. So I will also do that because I don't want to sit here and call off all these prompts. But the Gothic Hearts readathon is very casual. A lot of the prompts have to do with activities. So not even just reading. And the prompts that are about reading also include that you could read a short story or a poem for this challenge. So I am going to read some poetry for this challenge. One of the poets and writers I'll be reading from is Edgar Allan Poe, and that's kind of like double dipping because I'm currently on week 5 of a semester course that I'm teaching on Edgar Allan Poe. So I'm already reading his poetry and his stories for that class in order to be able to teach, you know. And then I'm also going to revisit some of Emily Bronte's poetry because I just love her poetry. And I love, of course, Wuthering Heights, but I feel like her poetry is often overshadowed by Wuthering Heights. So I'm going to revisit some of her poetry because I'm just in the mood for some Emily Bronte poetry. So that fits right on into the Gothic Hearts Challenge. Finally, there is one book that I hope to get to this month. It's one of my most highly anticipated reads of the year. And it's only 138 pages, so I hope I can get to it in the midst of all these other, commitments I've made. And that is Coup de Grace by Sophia Audrum. And speaking of triggering, I know this one will potentially be triggering for me because I did attempt to take my life in 2017. And I've talked about this on my channel before. I have major depressive disorder. I take medication. I have psychiatry appointments and therapy appointments on the regular. But it's still something that's, it's a part of me and it always will be. So let me tell you what Coup de Grace is about. Vickin has a plan. Throw himself into the St. Lawrence River in Montreal and end it all for good, believing it to be the only way out for him after a lifetime of depression and pain. But stepping off the subway, he finds himself in an endless looping station. Determined to find a way out again, he starts to explore the rooms and corridors ahead of him. But no matter how many claustrophobic hallways or vast cathedral-esque squares he passes through, the exit is nowhere in sight. The more he explores his strange new prison, the more he becomes convinced that he hasn't been trapped there accidentally. And among the shadows and concrete, he comes to realize that he almost certainly is not alone. So that sounds really, really good. But again, potential to dredge up some feelings, but sometimes it's okay, right? To have those feelings. And quite often I do find catharsis in reading this type of work. Probably the same reason people are reading dystopian novels at a high rate right now. I just saw something, I believe it was from Book Riot. I will link that article down in the description box below too, where there's been a resurgence of people checking out from libraries or buying books like The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, 1984 by George Orwell. So people sometimes find comfort and strength in confronting the horrors of reality through literature or movies, television series. So I am going to wrap this up now, I think, and finish my makeup. I appreciate you watching this. This was very, as I said at the beginning, casual, informal, just kind of, like I said, just sitting down, chatting with a friend, because we all need friends right now. We always need them, but now it feels like a very important time to build community and to just be who we are, not try to hide behind the facade that everything's okay. So if you like this video, then I hope you'll hit that like button. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe and if you would hit that bell so we can continue to build this community and talk about books and lift and strengthen each other up. So until next time, make sure that you take care of yourself. Hex the patriarchy, and I'll see you next time. Bye.